What's going on, guys? Graham GSM Matthews back here with another Dark Side of the Ring review here on the WrestleRant channel. Today we're talking Season 6, Episode 4, Tony Atlas, Too Much, Too Soon. Now, I will say this to start. I apologize for the delay in putting this video up. I've watched all the Dark Side of the Ring reviews. I've been caught up in watching the show. I just haven't had a chance to review and record these videos. So you're going to get a lot of Dark Side of the Ring reviews in the coming days from Episode 4, 5, 6, the Eddie Gilbert one. No, that was last week. The what was the one that aired this past week? I don't remember. The Billy Jack Haynes episode. That will either be up by the end of the weekend or early next week. So keep an eye out for that. But once I'm finished catching up with the show, recording these reviews and videos, we should be back to reviewing the show on a weekly basis. I've just been super backed up and busy since Mania Week, going into it, coming out of it a few weeks ago. So I apologize for that. But anyway, Season 6, Episode 4 of the show, the Tony Atlas episode. Now, this aired during Mania Week, so didn't really have a lot of eyes on it, didn't have a lot of people talking about it. It was one of the lesser eventful episodes, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it ended up being a pretty good episode. It wasn't as dark as other episodes of this season, let alone of the show itself. But I still thought it was solid overall, and it had a great ending, too, that we'll get to. But so I wrote down some notes here as I usually do, and I'll kind of go through them here. But they talked about how he once press slammed Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden. He talked about growing up, his mom always told him to protect himself, which is why he got into fights and kind of had to, care for himself growing up and, protect himself in fights and just, in situations such as that. He talked about how he got pushed to the ground at one point. He told this story how he got pushed to the ground and had his skull split open. And he believes from that incident, and I can only imagine how bloody and how disgusting that would have been. He mentioned that he believes that he probably suffered brain trauma that still he suffers from to this day. So some backstory behind why he thinks he still has issues and thinks differently and acts differently than other people. And that includes his not foot fetish, but he goes into a lot about his shoe fetish and being stomped on by other women. Now, this has been synonymous with Tony Atlas now for a long time, and I was kind of surprised to see them bring it up here and acknowledge it. But he does mention how he buys women's shoes, not to wear, but he buys women's shoes for them to then proceed to step on him and stomp him in the face. There have been videos on social media that have surfaced, and they showed some of it here on the show. It was pretty fucking crazy. But he mentions how that shoe fetish keeps him calm. I won't question it, but that's what he said. He talks about how he got into bodybuilding and powerlifting growing up. He got paid to train wrestling, that is. And he also won the Mr. USA competition. That's where the Mr. USA nickname came from when he started wrestling. He mentioned how he won the Georgia Championship Wrestling television title. He teamed with Tommy Rich. And he said that there was like one black person per promotion back then. So it made it very challenging to be able to work in all these different promotions because if that promotion already had their like designated, African-American talent, one black guy, then he couldn't work there or it would get very competitive between him and that other guy that was there. That was just the lay of the land back then. And he said he constantly got called the N-word back then, which honestly isn't surprising. He doesn't like condone it. He's not saying that it was okay, obviously, for that to happen, among other racial slurs, I'm sure. But he just mentions that it was normal and how it didn't affect him at first, but over time it did. He mentioned that he made $100,000 his first year in wrestling, which was, that's a lot of money to make in your first year in wrestling today. The fucking NXT people, I don't even think that make that much. And if they do, it's not much higher than that. But especially back then, decades ago, that's a lot of money. And the whole kind of premise of this episode is that he wasn't really ready for it. It was too much too soon, as the title of the episode suggests. And they mentioned, they asked him, what did you do with that money? And he mentioned, well, I gave it all away. I would give it to this person, give it to that person. And I guess in a generous, kind way, he would give away money. But he would also just people would also use him for said money too. They would say, oh yeah, drinks are on Tony tonight. Let's go out to eat. It's on Tony and blah, blah, blah. He was stupid with the money, and he admits that in retrospect. He mentions that people took advantage of him. He talks about, and this is a Dark Side of the Ring bingo card thing, but got into a car accident, as many people on this show do. He mentioned how he got into a car accident, but he ended up recovering just fine, but kind of a crazy accident though. Ended up winning the tag titles with Rocky Johnson. That would have been the Rock's father, not Peter Maivia, but the Rock's father, Rocky Johnson. And he actually mentioned they did not get along. That I did not know. And they did not get along due to jealousy. He thinks, and other people said here on the show, that Rocky Johnson was jealous of the star that Tony Atlas was becoming, and Rocky didn't like him for that reason, they said. Atlas says that Rocky tried to get him fired on many different occasions, and I guess that was proven true by other people that were interviewed for the episode. That Rocky Johnson, again, was jealous of the spot that Tony had and the star that he was becoming, so he tried to get him fired on a number of different occasions. Tony Atlas says that nothing was done with them as champs. They did nothing as tag team champions, and they dropped the belt soon after, he said. And he also said that Vince did not tell them they were dropping the belts. Now, I don't remember. I watched this a few weeks ago, so I don't remember exactly. I don't know if he means that when they dropped the titles in the match, he didn't know they were losing the match, or he didn't know ahead of time, like until right beforehand, that they were dropping the belts. But either way, he mentioned that Ole Anderson, shocking thing for him to say, I know, quote unquote, but he had said that fans weren't ready for black champs. And this was also the same guy that said The Undertaker would never make $1 in the business. So, again, take Ole Anderson's words for what they're worth, which wasn't really all that much, but I guess that was something he said back then as to why the tag team title reign for Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas did not last long. But he talks about getting ribbed into going to a KKK meeting, which is pretty fucking crazy. Like, I mean, ribs in and of themselves, rather easy for me to say, can sometimes be harmless, but back then, not so much. And getting ribbed into going to a KKK meeting where you could get killed, obviously being a black guy, and obviously just unsafe in general, pretty fucking nuts. So he talks about how he fell into alcoholism around that point. He bought a gun, and I guess he passed up an opportunity in wrestling, whether it be with WWE. I forgot where this was. I think this was in WWE because I wrote after this that Vince had to make an example out of him. But he passed up an opportunity to get pushed or to do a big match or whatever so he can go get stepped on. I wrote down here, passed up opportunity to get stepped on, and that makes it sound like he passed up an opportunity to get stepped on. But what he did was he passed up an opportunity that he was afforded by WWE to go get stepped on by some random woman. And that was kind of the place that he found himself in mentally around that point. So like I said, Vince had to make an example out of him. So he left WWE. He got released from WWE, and he went to International Championship Wrestling instead. This was a promotion that Tony said that Vince sabotaged the shows, knowing not probably just because Tony was there, but Vince sabotaged a lot of different promotions that he saw as a threat, or even if they weren't a threat and he thought they could be a threat, he sabotaged those shows. And that included, I guess, this International Championship Wrestling promotion. So after that promotion went under and they couldn't book Tony anymore and whatever, he actually said he became homeless for a year and a half. And it was around that time that he became suicidal. And he would fall asleep on park benches sometimes. Like he showed us the park bench where he basically resided for a year and a half. And he would go to sleep freezing and sometimes hope that he would die in his sleep. Like that's how depressed he was at that point. He mentioned how he even went into a coma at one point after freezing outside. And some random woman saved him. And he ended up actually marrying that woman. She took him in, took care of him. He ended up marrying her. And it wasn't long after that he actually got offered a contract to come back to WWE by Vince. But he returned as Saba Simba, that super racist gimmick. And everyone on the show thankfully recognizes the gimmick was racist. But the people they have on the show that are talking about this, all say it's bad. It's why would they? And everyone knew it was Tony Atlas. He was wearing some over-the-top gear and a face, a head mask or whatever, a helmet or whatever. But everyone knew it was Tony Atlas, and he wasn't out of the business for that long where people didn't know it was him. But Tony said, listen, it was either that or be homeless. So I'd rather just make the money. So not that he didn't care, but he mentioned that, I was not going to say no. I needed the money. And Ricky Steamboat, who was great to see interviewed for this episode, I think just because, I don't know if he's a close friend of Tony Atlas, but he was around at that point and he was familiar with the stuff that WWE was doing with people like Tony and whatever. He mentions that it was probably Vince's way of making fun of him. And you could say that for so many different gimmicks and people that were saddled with stupid stuff over the course of their career, booking decisions. that Vince just did it just to make fun of him or to show that he had the power, he had the control. That was very much a Vince thing to do. So he ended up having a run in WCW, I guess, soon after that. He got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006. And they actually brought up, which I thought was cool, that Mark Henry requested that Tony Atlas be his manager when Mark Henry was the ECW champion back in 2008. And that was a partnership that actually lasted a while. I remember when Tony debuted, and that was when I first started watching wrestling, so I had no idea who Tony Atlas was. That was my first exposure, actually, to Tony Atlas. But I remember that, and they had a pretty good thing going as the ECW champion, combo with Henry as the ECW champion and Tony Atlas as his manager. And they actually showed Tony Atlas wrestling a match with Evan Bourne that ended up being, I think his last performance, his final match in WWE TV. One of his final appearances was on ECW against Evan Bourne. But he wasn't there for all of that long. I remember he debuted on the ECW in the summer of 08, so probably around July, late June, July. And then even after Mark Henry lost the ECW championship, he was there. Tony Atlas was there up until late 08, early 09. They kept him around to do the Abraham Washington show. They did not acknowledge that here, where he did the dumb laugh, where he would introduce Abraham Washington and do the whole dumb laugh. That's what I knew that's what I knew Tony Atlas for at that point. They did not get into that here. But he said that one day he talked to Vince, and Vince said, oh, you can't make the travel and whatever, it's fine. You can't make the show or whatever it was. Vince was oh yeah, we'll take care of you. It's okay. And the next day after that, he got fired. So it just kind of goes to show you, as we've heard in many other stories, that Vince could not be trusted. But he continues to wrestle even to this day. And they show footage of that as well. They mention in the episode that his wife Monica, the woman that saved him and that he ended up marrying soon after, has actually been hospitalized since 2019 with a stroke. And he continues to take care of her. They show her here at the end of the episode, and he's happier now than ever before, including, he even mentioned that he was happier when he was homeless, when he had nothing, than he was when he had all that money and he was on top and famous and whatnot, which is pretty powerful stuff. And I thought that was a really heartwarming way. What happened to his wife was obviously sad, but seeing the love that he has for her and the way that he takes care of her and stuff like that was very very heartwarming. So I thought that was a nice note to end on. Overall, a good episode. Of all the ones that I'll be reviewing here in the coming days, this was probably the one that you don't really need to go out of your way to watch. It's not dark. We're at a point in the show, 6 seasons in, that a lot of these stories won't really necessarily be dark, but they are interesting. And honestly, I learned a lot about Tony Atlas that I did not previously know. They didn't talk about Legends House. I mean, I don't really know where you would have fit that in anyway, but I will mention that it was a great show. I reviewed all the episodes here for the channel many years ago, and I very much enjoyed Legends House when it was on the air a few years ago. I say a few, it was over a decade ago at this point. Half the cast is dead. Tony, thankfully, is still with us. But anyway, good episode here of Dark Side of the Ring, Season 6, Episode 4, Tony Atlas, Too Much, Too Soon. Thank you guys for checking out my review of Dark Side of the Ring. More Dark Side of the Ring reviews coming here on the channel in the coming days before we go back to doing them weekly. You can also check out all my other Dark Side of the Ring reviews in the description box, a massive playlist with every Dark Side review I've ever done, dating back to Season 1. So check those out. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, and consider becoming a channel member and signing up for a WrestleRant All Access Pass to get videos like this ad-free and early access to. So only $5 a month, many other perks as well. Consider signing up for that. I would greatly appreciate it. You also get shout-outs at the beginning and end of every live stream that we do here on the channel. At any rate, folks, have an awesome one. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.